We ready?
You ready, guys?
I'm ready if you're ready.
Go.
Yes, I'm going. Okay, everybody. I've got two very short presentations to give. Sort of tacked together. They're not very related. Although you could argue that air distribution is related to soft landings. It's part of it. Anyway, let's go. So this is talking about ASOS, Greater London House. There's a picture of the gym. You'll see generally it follows the same scheme throughout. We've got exposed soffits, swell diffusers, fan coil units, and there were some issues on the original phase one where the grills didn't work very well and we had stratification issues. So in subsequent phases we've said we're smoke testing all the diffusers, make sure we get good air distribution.
What stratification?
So basically in winter time when it's really cold, when it's in heating mode, all the hot air came out of the diffuser and just went straight up to the soffit and left it quite cold in the occupied area. This is largely due to the diffusers being oversized, which I'll come back onto that later.
And that causes overheating at high level on the fan units, which made the fan units dump all people's head from cold down.
It caused all sorts of problems here. It was about 35 degrees plus up at the soffit and not very warm in the actual occupied area. Anyway, not down to anyone who's still with us anyway. So now I've just taken a few videos. I'll just talk you through them, different diffusers and different issues that we came across. So this one's just a typical. And is there a way of playing this? There we go. So it's just blowing smoke in front of the diffuser. Hopefully we can see it. It's throwing out generally about 2 meters, which is about what you want. Now you can see you get quite good induction. So that's the diffuser's drawing the air back up underneath it. So make sure you get good circulation around the whole occupied area. You can see the light fitting is slightly obstructing the throw, but I've got a better example of a light obstructing the air diffusion, and we had no evidence of any dumping or stratification, so that's good. That's sort of what we're looking for with that one.
We raised the lights up by about 25, 30 more as well after that.
So this one. This is where we've got the two very close together for some reason, to do with coordination. So we're a bit concerned that we might get dumping in this situation. So this is what he's looking for now. That, as you can see, the air streams, although they're colliding, it didn't actually cause any dumping of air, just sort of had a bit of a turbulent zone. And the second one we tested directly over the desks to make sure that there's no drafts over the actual desks in the occupied area. As you can see there's the air just rising up, which is the induction effect of the swell diffusers.
There was a smell of smoke at the desk.
It's not real smoke. That doesn't smell. Just for everyone's benefit. Anyway.
So that's what you want then, the air to rise? Or to
Ideally, because you don't want drafts across the desk, but it's good if air just sort of floats in and just rises up under the
It's drawing the fresh air up as well.
diffusers, yeah. So it was surprisingly okay, that one. This is the one where we've got a diffuser right next to a linear fitting. You can see that it's just trapping the air and it's just going horizontally along the light instead of diffusing out. Apologise for the camera work.
On the last one before that, it looks like there was a floor grill on there as well.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there's floor grills doing fresh air. It's only a very small amount of air.
Yeah.
We're not worried about air distribution with those. It's just putting a small amount into the space.
Yeah.
We did actually. I didn't bother showing the video because you didn't really see much.
Locate them under people's seats.
Yeah.
See if anything
To be honest, it's such a small amount of air that I don't think you're going to notice either way. Right, this one's quite funny. This is what happens when you put the wrong insert into an air valve. So that's dumping. So that's basically an extract air valve being used for supply air. It's that guy's fault. It was actually specified correctly, just he's got the wrong insert in there. So instead of diffusing outwards, it's just chucking it down straight on top of the chair where someone wants to be sitting. So it would be very uncomfortable. And let's move on. So general guidelines that I would suggest for when you use it, they've got this situation of exposed soffits. Swirl diffusers, if they're sized correctly and select them right, then they do provide a good air distribution. You want to look at net velocity, sort of 1.5 to 2.5 meters a second. To reduce stratification, it's good if you don't supply the air too hot. You don't want it quite close to room temperature. So if you've got a room temperature, say 23, you want to supply it about 25, 26, so it doesn't, because the bigger the temperature difference, the more stratification effect you'll get.
But sorry, in order to achieve that, because you don't choose how hot you throw the air at, because
it depends on your system, obviously.
cycle throws air as hot as it needs to achieve the temperature. So to achieve those flow temperatures, did you have to potentially use the heating as the main factor for sizing the ventilation system?
It's something to consider in the controls. Obviously, if you've got a VRF system, you've basically got no control over this. But if you're designing a LTHW system, obviously it's a good reason why you might want to use low temperature hot water heating system. You might want to select lower temperatures, which, as well as operating more efficiently, will reduce issues such as stratification. And so other things, instead of having temperature sensors in the backs of the fan coil units controlling it, have them actually in the room. And
Jeff, the exhaust valve grill that you had there, that was you've been used as supply grill. Is there any slides that show the different connector at the top, or the different insert? And why?
I didn't share that. But basically, it's instead of just a round one, it will angle the air outwards instead of just letting it fall. I should have put a picture into that, but I didn't. The other thing is put in, there's different types of swirl diffuser, and if you got like a lip around the edge of it, which is this bit here, it's all you need is a little bit just to create a bit of coander effect, and you get quite a good throw, a couple of meters.
Coander effect.
I'm going to get into it. It's sort of like, it was like the effect of the air sticking across a surface, like a ceiling. It helps it go further. If you don't have that little lip, you'll find that it drops down into the space very quickly. So just things to consider.
What about using the wax diffusers? Would you recommend it?
Well, you can do if.
What wax do you do?
Yeah. So people like Lindab and that will supply wax actuated swirl diffusers, so it'll sense the temperature of the air coming through and angle it downwards if it's in heating or across in cooling.
It's a pretty good video that Tyler did on those diffusers, isn't it? Probably will connect somewhere.
Yeah.
So is it motorised then?
No, it's wax actuated, so it just the temperature of the air going across it actuates it itself. So no power supplies.
Passive.
Does
The Tyler video, I think, is active, which are an active system.
the wax.
Yeah, you can get active ones as well, but then you've obviously got a lot of cost and controls and wiring them up.
Sorry, did you have a video showing an example of a grill where it is dumping?
Yeah, there was the
Yeah.
valve one where it was just dumping.
But with the swirl one, I haven't seen one with the swirl.
Well, none of them dumped because in this phase of the project we sized them all right, so they didn't dump.
So you didn't do videos.
I wasn't able to
testing
get
of
into
the other
the.
part of the project.
No,
Okay.
because it was already done. So I could only do the bit that we did in this phase. Anyway, let's move on to the highly exciting soft landings. Most of us know roughly what soft landings is, so I'm not going to go into that too much detail. This is more about what it means in practice. You might think, what is the relevance of a bus? Well, I think a bus is actually, this particular bus is actually an excellent example of soft landings, because when they were designing this, they spent a lot of time collaborating with all the stakeholders and the people involved, and it was identified, as well as the usual things about economy and robustness, it was identified that it would be very useful when it breaks down if they can swap an engine out very quickly. So the main priority is to keep them on the road. So they were designed so they could change the engine out of that in 4 hours and get it straight back on the road. So obviously when the new versions came around and they didn't go through this soft landings type process, wound up taking 2 hours to change out, 2 days to change out an engine. So all of a sudden they had all these buses that was getting stacked up, having repairs that were not on the routes, and they didn't have places to put them, and there was all sorts of issues that they could have avoided if they'd gone through a soft landings type process. It wasn't called soft landings in those days, but it's essentially the same thing. Just setting a brief based on what the priorities that actually matter to your client. So I've poached a few slides from the BizReact conference. I just picked one presentation to poach slides from, the others. I just don't have time to go through it. So this is from the guys from UCL. They're very much into soft landings. It's sort of part of their framework. It's built into all the contracts. So for them, the key things are, obviously you've got to have a vision of what you want to start off with, which then filters into having a strategy or different strategies, for example, a sustainability strategy, wellness strategy, all these sorts of things. And then they then filter into more detailed plans and targets. The detailed targets and stuff are really what goes into your soft landings. If I move on, it's just a few highlights really from them. So this is basically what they're looking for. Clear requirements, accounting for rising expectations, integrating continuous improvement, all, usual buzzwords. But this has got it's common sense really, but when talking about designing a building, the blue triangle is the cost of it, and simple things like getting the building form and orientation right don't have much cost associated, but there's the biggest environmental benefit, which is the green triangle, and then your services, sub-metering, they've got the medium cost and a relatively medium benefit, and then the active stuff, PV turbines and that, massive cost and not a huge benefit. So it's all about getting the base design right in the first place. So you don't need to use renewables and that. This is a good one to talk about their take on wellness. So things like outside views, daylight, are the key things for them, and they've come up with these stats. Key ones I would say were under daylight, they measured 15 to 14% higher test scores in well-daylight areas. You know, learning 20 to 26% faster. I'm not quite sure how they measure that, but that's some quite significant numbers. And you know, this is stuff that we can use to prompt other clients into taking wellness seriously.
Are those numbers that they've come up with? Is this their
These are
research?
their numbers based on their own studies. So, you know, test scores is obviously quite easy to quantify.
Because we have access to a large database of information on this subject of comparing different air conditioning systems, for example, and seeing the effect on people. Is it from University of Jakarta?
Yeah, CBU does tons of this
Yeah.
sort of stuff. So it'd be really interesting to compare that to the other data that we've got.
Yeah, they are obviously a bit vague on exactly where they get all this from, but you know, just saying they're taking it all seriously, which is a good thing.
Because we should use that stuff to say to a client, well, yes, I know chill beams are more expensive, but the benefit are not in the energy, they are in this productivity gains.
Right. Now this is getting into a bit more how soft landings would look in practice. So this is more of a project planner. What sort of actions you take at what stage. I'll skip through onto the next one, it's a bit more relevant. So this is talking about the stakeholder consultation that they always go through, FM engagement, talking about commissioning, what they need from monitoring, you know, lessons learned from previous projects, and I'm just aware of the time is getting short. So the key thing for them is reducing the performance gap. Obviously to do that they need to understand it first. Some usual things, budgets don't often match ambitions, conflicting expectations, inadequate understanding of operational requirements, inaccurate energy modelling, value engineering, poor commissioning, insufficient training. It's all factors that tie into the performance gap. And then this is more about what they actually do. So at the key stages, so it's broken down into the sort of REVA stages. Stage 0 is all about engagement with the stakeholders, getting a decent brief, making sure you actually get all the participants. So, you know, estates people, facilities people, design team, having soft landings, champions, sustainability, specialists input, and then during the design development, it's having the key workshops, you know, getting more into the detail of each of those and getting more specific people involved in those ones.
Have they got much under procurement and planning there? Because the whole thing is to try and take this right through.
Yep. I think they're focusing a bit more on this on the briefing stage and setting defined targets at the briefing stage and seeing those followed through the design. Then if you get it all built into the contracts, then you can sort of enforce the outcomes rather than getting to the end of the project and say, oh, we want feedback on why there's this performance gap, and then no one's got anything in their contract to look at it, and no one does anything about it.
Yeah.
So just if it starts early, then it's much easier to follow through. It's sort of the key message. So this is more post-project completion review process. Yeah, lessons learned. Yeah, so do a functional evaluation sort of over usually 12 to 18 months, as said, and then the technical evaluations against measured data versus modelled. So the key thing is getting all the right actions in people's contracts to make sure they can follow through with it. Anyway, that is about that. Any questions? Just put a little prompt there, keep it in everyone's mind.
More actually a request. If you could send us a bit more information about these productivity gains, any source where you can find it?
That was literally that was the information.
That's it? Okay.
That was
I know the person who runs the Health and Wellbeing Master's Programme
Okay.
for UCL, so I'm sure he can send it if you wanted it.
Because it'd be useful to do what on a project we did with Boden, to say, yes, these systems are comparable, we compare them in cost terms, but we would like to compare them in gains, in productivity gains.
Yeah.
And it shows completely different pictures.
That's the
We will
that's
have
the
a back
grail.
in parallel with the GCS studies.
I think, yeah, for the productivity gains, it's very important to get the client on board and commit to measuring those productivity gains at right early stage. You can set targets as a target for your soft landing. So we want a productivity gain of 5% or whatever it might be. Obviously set out more in detail how you're going to do that, but then if you've got that as a metric to start off with, then they can commit to measuring it and giving feedback, and otherwise it's probably won't happen.
I'm thinking more of that happens at the back end of the project, you mean? But
Well,
at the front end
yeah,
of the project, it's a choice of system.
I would say it's more likely to happen if you set a target at the start.
Okay.
So, it may or may not happen. There's lots of things affect productivity, but not just the well-being of the environment, but it should be.
Well, it goes hand in hand,
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
The key is for us proving it and getting that data to do it. So if we get people on board, then hopefully we'll build up some data that we can use to get more people on board.
Thanks, Graham.
Mrs. B.
Hello?
Hello? Hi.
London, can you switch to the next slide, please? Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just going to give a quick overview on fuel cells. Prior to joining the technical group, I worked for a very large energy company, which is commonly accused of overcharging its customers for both of its main products. I worked in research and development for the last few years within the company, looking at what new technologies are likely to come into the domestic market. So this is slanted slightly towards the domestic market, but everything is completely scalable. But it can start small and the size can go up significantly. So next slide, please. It's just a couple of currently available fuel cells. These fall under the micro-combined heat and power category. So ideally suited to large domestic properties or small commercial properties. Because as I say, they are scalable, and I've seen them in banks. So you can build 5, 10, 15, 20 kilowatts per unit, but you can actually start down as low as about 20 kilowatts, which domestically will cover the base load electrically and just give you a very small trickle of heat into the system.
Sorry, I missed the word.
Heating system or water.
So sorry, Pete, we missed a word because of a sound. You said from domestic property, it starts at as low as?
As low as about 300 watts.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Brian. Go on to the next one, please. This is just a little bit of basics as what is inside. So there, in the top corner is I think it's a 700 watt stack at the best power unit, which is known as the steel gen. Hasn't quite gone to market yet, but they very recently announced a tie-up with Bosch, who are very big within the domestic market and also commercially. And over the side, it just shows a few other stacks of the options. Start down as 1 kilowatt and go up to 5, and again they can be banked. Another little diagram in the corner is really how the stack works. So you've got your fuel going in, you've got your anode, your cathode, your electrolyte, and from that process, then you will generate your electricity, but you will also have waste heat coming off as well, which can be very useful. Go on to the next slide, please. A little bit on operation for the fuel source. Certainly the units that I've looked at in the past and been involved with, you're using natural gas as your fuel source, and you can see from the chemical makeup of natural gas, you've got your carbon and you've got your 4 atoms of hydrogen. And if you go through a reforming process, which is basically putting steam through the gas, you can draw out that hydrogen to feed into the cell. So, and the process of making the steam is also useful for preheating hot water or preheating the property. But the other way of making electricity is, making hydrogen is via electricity. So you can, with water and excess power, so at night if you've got excess wind power that's not being used, it's a very good way of actually harnessing the hydrogen, which can then be stored. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So there's a couple of types of cells, and they basically have their advantages and disadvantages. So you've got the solid oxide, which operates at a higher temperature, which is much more usable, certainly within the domestic market and commercially. Still only up to about 65 degrees, possibly higher. As the temperature goes up, the efficiency drops. The biggest issue with a solid oxide fuel cell is you need to keep it running. They do not like being closed down. So as part of my role previously, I was involved mechanically a little bit in thermal integration. How do you integrate these into a system and keep them running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, without any unplanned shutdowns? A planned shutdown will not cause any problems. So the solid oxide is the better technology for usability, but you have to look after them very carefully. And then you've got the proton exchange membrane, which operates at a lower temperature, but they're much more resilient. And they will cope with much more frequent accidental switching on, switching off. But they both operate with fuel in their mix, both very low NOx, SOx and carbon monoxide, all modular, all, I say very quiet. The process is very quiet, but sometimes the fans within the unit can be fairly noisy, but they can be attenuated. And the efficiency, the generation of electricity is fairly high. Let's go to the next slide. You can see here, I've just stolen somebody else's good work. And Japan is probably where most of this technology originally took off. Due to various reasons and problems they've had out in Japan, it is now very popular. You can see the proton exchange membrane has been about for a long time. The efficiency is better than the general grid power efficiency, but it's nowhere near as good as the solid oxide fuel cell, which is getting up to 50%. But the new technologies now that are being created with slightly more robust cells have the potential to get up to 60% electrical efficiency, but they also have thermal efficiency well in excess of 60%. And certainly when we've looked at internal combustion engine microwave provide heat power for domestic markets, the maximum electrical efficiency would get about 26%. So for on-site generation, this is a very good technology, potential technology. On to the next slide, please. And the next slide. What's happened there? Duplication. So really what's going on within this market at the moment is a project and lead known as hydrogen, where they look at actually putting hydrogen within the gas grid. So they're taking an area and working with Northern Gas Works So if you have piped hydrogen going throughout a network, then this technology becomes even better. So on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And really, where is this going wrong? Why are we all not putting fuel cells? There's a few barriers to the market. Certainly domestically, the cost of the unit is fairly expensive compared to other technologies, but the payback can be fairly good. If you've got a good base load, when you're running 24 hours a day, the payback period can be sort of down to 4-5 years. Certainly government policy has caused, definitely in the domestic market, probably small commercial market, a lot of problems. There's had a feed-in tariff attached, which is constantly being chopped and changed, and the last time it was reviewed, it was really set for a very finite period and a very small number of units. So that actually caused problems with the manufacturers actually not willing to invest, because it didn't look like the technology, if it didn't take off very, very quickly, and then you get their production curve right down low, nobody was willing to actually invest. Another issue, certainly in the domestic market, wouldn't be commercial, it's actually the space required. We all have a boiler, we all have a hot water tank, but actually to find a position for another unit, because these would generally be an add-on unit in addition, because you'll only ever want a size to cope with your base load. That is an issue. Lack of awareness is another issue. And, say, as I mentioned earlier, the uncertainty on the payback. And another issue we certainly encountered in the domestic market is, on average, people will move every 7 years. So, to invest a lot of money into your property with the thought you may be moving, and people not really being aware of the benefits, it just didn't really take off. But on to the next slide, please. Do you have any questions?
I've got two.
Thank you.
One, you mentioned that Japan was investing heavily with this.
Yes.
Have Japan made any inroads in making it into the domestic market?
Yes, they have. In the domestic market in Japan, it's very widespread.
It is quite.
It is, yes. Yeah.
The second question, the organisation that you used to work with,
Yes.
are they still doing research related to this?
No, they're not. No, the organisation we used to work with went through a strategic review, decided that they needed to put that down to basics in supplying of fuel, and as the team I worked for was a cost of the business, we were a fairly easy target to be.
So the only reason I ask is whether in fact there's a big organisation like that still pushing this forward.
No, just as it all closed down, there were talks going on with other large utilities on the potential of taking this up, but with government caps on fuel prices, all the large utilities are under serious financial pressure. So it really needs a change in legislation or a very good feed-in tariff to get this type of product to be launched, then get the cost down to the level where it needs to be.
I'm a small question that is, so who's funding or who's pushing this hydrogen network up in the north?
It's a government.
It's a government.
It's a government, yes. Because it's understood that the gas network has the capability to be greened up. You can put into a gas network, and the vast majority of existing appliances can be maintained with that hydrogen injection, an increased amount of hydrogen. If it becomes a pure hydrogen, then things change, and additional safety devices may be required. But there is a possibility. The only thing it doesn't really have is steel pipes, the infrastructure would have to be infrastructure, plastic pipes.
Okay.
I've got two questions actually. Sorry, do you want to ask a question?
I was just going to say, I've got hundreds of questions. I'm going to ask them to you next week or
Thank
maybe
you.
the week after.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be really good to compare with our studies where we are with our hydrogen, fuel cells compared to heat pumps and various bits, so that we have it wrapped up. But I'm not going to ask them now because I know we're running about 20 minutes behind schedule.
My question is regarding the graph which you showed the efficiency. Could you go back to it for
Going back on?
Yeah, that
Yes.
graph, the only comment in there is that the efficiency of a central power grid is shown as a horizontal line. Now the efficiency of the power grid has been going up. 35% is the efficiency of an old-fashioned gas-powered or maybe coal-powered plant, but the efficiency of a modern gas-fired plant, a turbine, is about 60% efficiency, I believe.
Mostly.
I think this is linked to point of, yeah, I think this is telling the readers pointing of news. And I think I did also say that they had stone on this slide from somebody else.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
As I
Okay, this is just okay. So we have to,
point of view.
okay, we have to compare that with the.
So you've got your distribution losses as well. But also I did see it this time from somebody, so that was not my data.
And in terms of the hydrogen network, there were talks about distributing hydrogen through the existing pipe used by the gas. But there's two ways of distributing hydrogen: under pressure or as a liquid. As a liquid is too expensive because a third of the energy used to make the hydrogen is used to compress it, and another third is used to produce it in the first place from water. So the current hydrogen network plant would be a high pressure gas, but the capacity of the thermal capacity of hydrogen is lower than gas at compressed pressures. Is that correct?
you couldn't put it in because it'd be so much higher pressure than the gas there.
He was talking about mixed.
Yeah, certainly the big project is that we'll produce hydrogen into the natural gas. So the pressure will be as per the existing infrastructure.
Okay.
Right. So I'm gonna go through our Hackbridge site visit. Hackbridge Primary School. It's Yep. So we went into the site visit with Alex, with Monica, and it was an event run by the UK GBC, Green Building Council, and they wanted to show the work in progress of this exemplary project that we took part in. So we did the MP design, energy strategy, sustainability consulting, and I did the overheating assessment. So Hackbridge Primary School, it's kind of an exceptional design. It's the first passive plus certified building in UK. It's in front of the BZ. It's an iconic sustainable building, so even his location is quite important in terms of sustainability. It's gonna achieve net zero carbon in operation. We did a lot of work for having an exception, like a good natural ventilation strategy. There will be ground source heat pump providing heating and cooling as well. They will produce some tempered air for the air handling unit. There's a big thermal wheel. So what I've done for this project was the overheating assessment. So at design stage for planning, I did my report, I did my study, we had our chat with the architects, we suggested more solar shading on the south facade. We put in place the natural ventilation strategy. Also in the report, so we based the design on compliance with BB 101. In the report, BB 101 is an overheating standard that it's now out of date. It's been recently updated. It's the minimum for it was the minimum for compliance at the time. So it was in 2015 of the design, and it uses a weather file that is a statistical weather file, and it's not a real weather file. So that means that it might not be the most robust overheating standard to assess it.
So you cheated.
No, I didn't, because it was the compliant, what it was supposed to be done at the moment, and we also highlighted that in the discussion with the architects, so everyone was aware of that. But you know, once I had to go there for the site visit, my feeling was like a slight concern, because this was my feeling. And basically, we went on the 27th of July. That was one of the, I think the day after was the peak day in temperature that day. So I was quite concerned of what actually that space would have looked like if it was actually overheating, if actually the standard that we used was robust enough. And also I wanted to understand if actually they put in place our suggestion. I was not sure about that, I had no idea. I did my analysis, my calculation at the design stage, and then I didn't know what happened next. So this is the classroom, and I was quite pleased to see that our recommendations were in the design. So those are openable windows. Those are translucent windows that open with a mesh for nighttime ventilation.
Are they automated?
No.
It's higher level ones that are actually.
And then there is a damper to use stack ventilation. So this is the circulation space with a high level glazing that can be operable with actuators, and so there can be some night purge during nighttime. And the floors also are based on concrete exposed floors.
Did anyone ever monitor how much you were getting when you were doing the night purchase, compared it to what you thought was going to happen?
No.
So they actually have to feed that stack at the top.
So
Maybe measure it.
Was it all done on this? I was just wondering if the contract was.
do you mean in this project? It's
Yeah.
still under construction, so it's still. So when we were there, Alex was showing how actually the place was fresh. The truth is that there were no internal gains, and also there were still some walls missing. So actually the space was quite comfortable, but still I had some concern about that. But anyway, everything was as we had I had suggesting the design at the design stage. Then we went around the building. We had a look to the HVAC systems. It was interesting to see. I didn't know that the thermal wheel was that big. And this is the ventilation and stuff. Then here, Alex was talking about the ground source heat pump and of the piping. So basically, to close off very quickly, the lesson learned from this site visit was that first of all, we have to get feedbacks from our projects in terms of how actually buildings are performing against overheating. Now we've got a number of projects that have been built and that we had assessed against different standards, against BB 101, against TM52, that is supposed to be a higher, more robust standard. And so we could start having an idea if actually this design has been done correctly, and if these standards are robust enough, and if we should do something else. And we should maybe change the thresholds. And also we should, so we should close the loop from design and post-occupancy. So we should start in the design, make sure that all the suggestions are implemented in the design, and then doing a survey in the next stage. And also we should now understand the implication of the new BB101 that is gonna align with the TM52 is gonna have on the design of the next building. And that's it.